Today on Coins Numismatic Series, we're uncovering the top 10 rarest and most valuable Washington quarter dollar coins ever discovered. From shocking mint errors to hidden treasures still hiding in circulation, some of these quarters have sold for jaw-dropping prices, even over $100,000. Whether you're a serious collector or just checking your pocket change, this value and history guide could change the way you see every single quarter forever. Let's dive in and reveal the coins that could make you rich. 1967 Washington quarter dollar coin. When you hold a 1967 Washington quarter between your fingers, you're holding a piece of history, a coin that circulated through the everyday lives of Americans during a time of social change, cultural upheaval, and monetary transition. Struck more than half a century ago, the 1967 Washington quarter sits at an important junction in U.S. coinage. It represents the waning days of silver in everyday currency, a shift in minting practices, and a lasting legacy that collectors still chase today for both its historic significance and its numismatic potential. The year 1967 comes at the heart of a decade marked by seismic shifts in American society. From the Vietnam War to the cultural transformations of the 1960s, this was an era of headlines, protests, technological breakthroughs, and social evolution. Within this broader context, the U.S. Mint was facing its own internal challenges, most notably a severe shortage of circulating coins, largely driven by hoarding as silver prices began to climb. For decades, Washington quarters had been struck in 90% silver, a composition cherished by collectors and valued for its intrinsic metal content. But by the mid-1960s, the rising price of silver meant that the metal in the coins was suddenly worth more than face value. In response, the Coinage Act of 1965 mandated sweeping changes to U.S. circulating coins, including the elimination of silver in quarters and dimes. Beginning with the 1965 Washington quarter, clad coinage replaced silver, outer layers of copper-nickel bonded to a core of pure copper. The 1967 Washington quarter, struck entirely in this new composition, reflects this pivotal shift. The change wasn't just technical. It reshaped how Americans interacted with their coins and how future generations would collect and value them. From a design perspective, 1967 quarters retained John Flanagan classic Washington portrait on the obverse and the heraldic eagle on the reverse. But the difference in metal composition created a distinct look and feel compared to earlier silver issues. The copper-nickel-clad pieces are slightly thicker, with a different luster and acoustic quality when dropped on a hard surface. To seasoned collectors, these subtleties matter. They tell a story of how coinage responded to economic forces and legal mandates. Mint marks on 1967 quarters tell another part of the story. In this transitional period, the U.S. Mint produced coins in Philadelphia and Denver, designated by a D mint mark, but many pieces were struck without mint marks as well. The variety in production locations and practices means that collectors have multiple avenues for study. The absence or presence of a mint mark can affect both rarity and market value, especially when considering condition and die variety. Mintage figures for the 1967 quarter are significant. Hundreds of millions were produced as the nation's demand for coins remained high. These coins circulated widely, passed from hand to hand, used in pay phones, tucked into piggy banks, and carried for decades. Their ubiquity might suggest that they are merely common pieces of currency, but collectors know that within this broad circulation there are stories, subtle differences, and sometimes significant finds that elevate certain specimens. One of the most interesting aspects of 1967 Washington quarters is how condition and grading influence value. Because these coins are now more than 50 years old, many circulated specimens show wear, flattened hair on Washington's portrait, softened eagle feathers, and nicks from use. These circulated examples hold history, but they typically remain near face value in the marketplace. However, uncirculated examples, those that never entered circulation and retain their original mint luster, can command premiums, especially when authenticated by professional grading services. Die varieties and errors also play a role. Collectors have documented subtle die cracks, minor doubling in lettering, and other anomalies that make certain 1967 quarters interesting beyond face value. While not as dramatic or high value as errors found in earlier silver issues or later modern era coins, These varieties still attract niche collector interest and add depth to collections focused on the Washington Quarter series. Another significant factor in collecting 1967 quarters is the historical transition they represent. Because they were among the first generation of clad coinage, they hold a unique place in the quarters lineage. Older collectors may remember receiving silver quarters and change only to see them phased out and replaced by the copper-nickel coins, a change that many initially resisted. 1992 D is essential. While common in circulated grades, high-end examples require patience, sharp eyes, and sometimes professional certification to confirm top quality. 1996 D Washington Quarter Dollar Coin. The 1996 D Washington Quarter may at first glance seem like just another coin from circulation, but for collectors and numismatists around the world, this coin holds a special place in the pantheon of modern U.S. rarities. To truly appreciate its value, we have to go beyond the surface and understand the historical context, the design choices, the numbers the U.S. Mint produced, and how subtle variations can make the difference between a common everyday quarter and a coin worth hundreds, even thousands of dollars. In 1996, the Washington Quarter had already been in production for over 4 decades. First introduced in 1932 to commemorate the 200th anniversary of George Washington's birth, it had become standard U.S. currency shortly thereafter. But by the 1990s, the series had largely faded from the spotlight. It was ubiquitous in pocket change, slot machines, and cash registers across the country. Yet within that very year's output, a small subset of coins would go on to captivate collectors. To understand why, it's important to look at where the coin was made. The Denver Mint, identified by a prominent D mint mark on the obverse just to the right of Washington's ponytail, produced millions of these quarters. The 1996 D quarter was part of the regular circulation strikes, with mintage figures that, on paper, don't scream scarcity. The reported mintage for the 1996 D Washington Quarter was around 1.2 billion pieces, an enormous number by virtually any standard. So how did something so plentiful become coveted? The answer lies not in low mintage, but in die variety and minting errors. Collectors quickly discovered that within the mass of these quarters were coins exhibiting doubled dies, particularly on the obverse. These doubled die errors, where the design elements were unintentionally struck twice, can create dramatic effects such as doubled lettering on Liberty, In God We Trust, or even the date itself. In some cases, the doubling is subtle and requires magnification. In others, the doubling is bold and unmistakable. Die error coins have always fascinated collectors because they are, by definition, mistakes, anomalies that the mint did not intend to produce. They represent a moment where the machinery slipped, where misalignment and human oversight collided to create a unique artifact. The 1996 D doubled die Washington quarters are among the most widely collected modern die errors precisely because the coins circulated. A worker's lost change, a coin dragged around in someone's pocket for years, can sometimes turn out to be one of these varieties, waiting to be discovered. The design itself is classic and unchanging by the 1990s. John Flanagan portrait of Washington on the obverse shows the first president looking stoically to the left, his hair tied back in a queue. The reverse, unchanged since 1932 until the state quarters debuted in 1999, features an eagle with outstretched wings balanced on a bundle of arrows, olive branches beneath. It's a dignified symbol of peace and readiness, and it remained untouched for decades, a visual constant in coinage. For collectors, condition matters. A perfectly struck 1996 D quarter graded MS 67 or higher by professional grading services like PCGS or NGC can command significant premiums over face value. But the real excitement lies in the error varieties. A boldly doubled die 1996 D can sell at auction for many times more than its standard counterparts. Even culls from circulation, coins that show wear, can be valuable if they display the right error. Beyond doubled dies, there are other subtle varieties that attract attention. Repunched mint marks, RPMs, where the D appears to have been punched onto the die more than once, can add collectability. Clash marks, off-center strikes, and broad strikes are also known among 1996 D Washington quarters and represent different types of minting anomalies. Each type tells a story about the production process, the die life, and the machine settings at the time of striking. Collectors typically pursue these coins in several ways. Some focus on assembling complete error sets, for example, all varieties of double dies or all known RPMs. Others seek high-grade uncirculated examples, appreciating the aesthetic qualities of a coin in pristine condition. And then there are those who relish the thrill of the hunt, hunting through rolls of quarters, scanning each coin under magnification, hoping to find that one gem that pays off the effort. Market values for the 1996 D. Washington quarter vary widely. A standard business strike quarter in worn condition is worth face value, 25 cents. A mint state, uncirculated, example might be worth a few dollars. But once you introduce a recognized error variety, the valuation leaps dramatically. For instance, a certified double die quarter can sell for several $100s or more, depending on the strength of the error and the coin's condition. Some rare RPMs or dramatic misstrikes have been known to fetch even higher prices at specialty auctions. The collector interest in the 1996 D. Washington quarter is part of a larger trend that sees modern coins, once dismissed as too common to collect, now attracting serious numismatic study. 1998 P. Washington quarter dollar coin. Imagine walking down to the store in 1998, receiving a shiny quarter and change, one of millions minted that year by the Philadelphia Mint. At first glance, it looks just like every other quarter in your pocket. George Washington's bust facing left, the words "Liberty" above, "In God We Trust" to the left, and the date proudly set in crisp numerals. On the reverse, the familiar eagle with outstretched wings stands poised between olive branches and arrows, a fitting symbol of strength and peace. But for collectors and numismatists around the world, the 1998 P. Washington quarter is far more than pocket change. It is a canvas rich with history, variety, and hidden value that continues to surprise and reward those who take a closer look. To understand the full story of the 1998 P. quarter, we need to explore the era in which it was produced. The late 1990s were a transitional period in United States coinage. After more than 6 decades of the same basic Washington quarter design, introduced in 1932 to honor the 200th anniversary of George Washington's birth, the U.S. Mint was preparing collectors and the public for an ambitious new direction, the State Quarters Program, launching in 1999. But 1998 was the last full year before that shift, and coins like the 1998 P. Washington quarter represent the end of a long and storied chapter in American numismatics. Philadelphia, identified by the absence of a mint mark on the obverse for these regular circulation strikes, produced a staggering number of 1,998 quarters. Billions were released, destined to circulate nationwide, power elevators, be lost in couches, and ride in pocket change for years. From a sheer numbers perspective, the 1998 P. quarter is extremely common. Yet within this commonness lies a rich tapestry of subtle variations, minting anomalies, and collector interest that elevate the coin from mere face value into the realm of sought-after numismatic pieces. Let's start with design features. John Flanagan's classic portrayal of Washington had graced quarters for decades by 1998, and the engraver's portrait remained largely unchanged. The clean, dignified lines of Washington's profile, his high forehead, his thoughtful expression, the ribbon holding his hair, convey a timeless quality. The reverse design, featuring the bald eagle, originally chosen by the Commission of Fine Arts in 1931, continued to balance symbolism with elegance. The eagle grasps arrows in one talon and olive branches in the other, signifying America's readiness for conflict but preference for peace. Though these design elements were familiar to nearly every American who used coins, numismatists took care to scrutinize every detail for variations and anomalies. One of the most significant areas of study for 1998 P. Washington quarters is die variety. A die is the engraved tool used to strike a coin. Every coin that comes off the press bears the imprint of that die. When a die is misprepared, misaligned, or worn, the resulting coins will carry telltale errors that can transform a common piece into something extraordinary. In the case of the 1998 P, collectors have documented several die varieties, including doubled dies, slight repunched mint marks. Even though these coins technically bear no mint mark, and other subtle indicators of irregular die preparation. Double die errors are among the most coveted. This type of error occurs not on the coin itself, but on the hub used to create the die. If the hub impresses the design onto the die more than once, and the impressions are slightly misaligned, then every coin struck from that die will exhibit doubling in the design. On the 1998 P. Washington quarter, these double impressions might be seen in the lettering of Liberty, in God We Trust, or in the date numerals themselves. To the untrained eye, the doubling might be nearly invisible, slight shadows around letters or subtle blurs. But to an experienced collector with a loupe or microscope, the variety reveals itself with striking clarity. Collectors who've found strong examples of these double die varieties know that such coins command premiums far above face value. A typical circulated 1998 P quarter is worth about 25 cents to a few dollars depending on condition. A certificated double die quarter can sell for significantly more, especially if the doubling is dramatic and verified by a professional grading service. The rarity of a strong double die combined with high collector demand creates a market where even modest differences in error strength can translate into large differences in price. Beyond double dies, there are other subtle anomalies that attract attention. Repunched die marks, for example, occur when mint workers inadvertently punch the mint mark area multiple times as part of the die preparation process. Though in the case of Philadelphia coins, these marks are often in areas of die polishing or hub re-engagement rather than literal mint marks. In either case, collectors document and categorize these varieties for their collections, and reference guides list known examples that have been authenticated over time. Another anomaly sometimes seen on 1998 P quarters is die deterioration doubling. Unlike true double dies, which arise at the hub stage, die deterioration doubling happens when a die becomes worn and begins to spread design features ever so slightly during striking. The resulting coins exhibit a kind of flattened or smudged doubling that tells a story of a die at the end of its useful life. These pieces hold interest for collectors as representations of the production process and die life cycles, even if they are not as rare or valuable as true double die errors. Condition, of course, remains a crucial determinant of value across all die varieties. A well-preserved 1998 P quarter in perfect uncirculated condition, brilliant, lustrous, free of scratches or contact marks, can fetch a premium, even if it's a standard strike. Professional grading services like PCGS and NGC have graded many 1998 P Washington quarters in the MS 66 to MS 68 range, and collectors prize these high grades because they represent the pinnacle of preservation. When such coins also exhibit a recognized error variety, the market value can increase dramatically. Collector interest in the 1998 P quarter isn't just about rarity or monetary value. It's part of a broader story of American numismatics at a pivotal moment. The year 1998 represented the final full year of the long-running Washington quarter design before the state quarters program began in 1999, a program that reinvigorated coin collecting in the United States and brought millions of new hobbyists into the fold. For veteran collectors, assembling complete sets of the classic Washington quarters prior to the design change was an important goal. For newer collectors, the 1998 series represents a kind of gateway, a bridge between the old quarters and the more colorful, state-specific issues that followed. The educational value of the 1998 P. Washington quarter can't be overstated. Modern coin collecting often begins with the basics. Can you spot the differences in die varieties? 1969 D. Washington quarter dollar coin. There are coins that seem unremarkable when you first pick them up, ordinary pieces of pocket change, familiar and unexciting. But then there are coins like the 1969 D. Washington quarter, which bridge the gap between the everyday and the extraordinary. To collectors, this quarter is not just a 25-cent piece of currency. It is a living artifact from a time of profound transition in America's coinage, a narrative of minting innovations, evolving standards, and a story about how even common coins can become fascinating numismatic treasures. To understand the significance of the 1969 D quarter, we need to travel back more than a half century, into a decade where societal change was coupled with changes in coin production itself. The Washington quarter had been minted since 1932, originally in 90% silver, introduced to commemorate the 200th anniversary of George Washington's birth. For decades, that silver design was beloved by both users and collectors alike. But by the mid-1960s, rising silver prices created a serious dilemma. The intrinsic value of the silver in the coins began to exceed their face value. As a result, the U.S. Mint transitioned to copper-nickel-clad coinage. Beginning in 1965, a moment that forever changed the trajectory of circulating coinage and set the stage for issues like the 1969 D-quarter. The year 1969 sits right in the thick of that transition. A decade marked by historic social movements, technological advancement, and cultural upheavals was also, on the numismatic front, grappling with how to produce coins efficiently and economically. The Denver Mint, identified by the ever-important D Mint mark on the obverse just below Washington's neck, was responsible for striking hundreds of millions of these quarters for circulation. At first glance, the plain copper-nickel finish may seem unremarkable, but for collectors who delve deeper, this coin represents a snapshot of the Mint's evolving production techniques and the challenges of striking millions of coins to exacting standards. Examining the design, it's important to appreciate that the 1969 D-quarter retained the classic imagery that had defined the series for decades. The obverse features John Flanagan's dignified portrait of George Washington, his hair tied back in a queue, his gaze stoic and resolute, echoing the leadership and legacy of America's first president. Around the portrait we find the familiar inscriptions, Liberty stretching across the top, In God We Trust, to the left, and the date clearly struck below. The presence of the D Mint mark on this side of the coin confirms its Denver origins. On the reverse, the design remains steadfast, the heraldic eagle perched regally with outspread wings, clutching a bundle of arrows beneath which rests a pair of olive branches, a symbol of America's readiness for defense and its aspiration for peace. This iconic design had remained unchanged since the quarter's inception in 1932, making each coin a continuation of a long-standing American tradition. But beyond the design itself, the real intrigue for collectors lies in understanding how this particular year and mint location fit within broader patterns of production, wear, errors, values, and collector interest. Mintage figures for the 1969 D Washington quarter are substantial. Hundreds of millions were produced. These coins were intended for circulation, and indeed, many found their way into everyday commerce, pocket change, retail cash registers, and coin collections across the country. A high mintage usually implies common status, and for many years, the 1969 D Washington quarter was treated as just another coin. But numismatists, always curious for nuance, soon began analyzing these pieces more closely. One of the first things collectors examine is condition. Because these coins were generally produced for circulation and not designed with collectors in mind, it is common to find them showing signs of wear. The details on Washington's hair can become smooth, the feathers of the eagle's wings can lose sharpness, and millions of coins bear the marks of use and time. In worn condition, a 1969 D quarter often trades near face value, perhaps $1 or $2 in the collector market, because the majority of these pieces were widely circulated. However, when you find an example that has never been in circulation, a coin that retains original luster, strong strike detail, and minimal surface marks, you are entering an entirely different tier of value. Uncirculated examples, especially those graded by professional services like PCGS or NGC, can command meaningful premiums. Coins graded in the mid-60s and above, MS 65 or MS 66, are especially sought after because they preserve the aesthetic integrity of the design while also reflecting high standards of minting quality. Beyond condition, collectors pay close attention to errors and varieties. With the massive production runs at Denver during this era, a variety of minting anomalies occurred, some of which are documented and collectible. Die cracks, for instance, can occur when the striking die, the steel tool used to impart the design onto the coin blank, begins to develop fractures due to stress from repeated use. These cracks show up on coins as raised lines or irregularities that interrupt the otherwise smooth fields or lettering. While not all die cracks translate to large premiums, certain well-documented varieties, especially those with distinct patterns, can attract niche collector interest. Another category of error involves doubling, specifically double dies and machine doubling. True double die errors are created when a die receives an imperfection during the hubbing process, where design elements are impressed onto the die more than once in slightly different positions. On quarters, this doubling might appear in the lettering or on the date. Machine doubling, on the other hand, is a different phenomenon caused during the striking process itself and is generally less desirable to collectors because it tends to be uniform and less dramatic. Interestingly, the 1969 series also has a variety known as the 1969 S silver quarter, which appeared with small mintages because collectors hoarded silver issues even as the mint transitioned to clad coinage. While the 1969 D did not include silver circulation strikes, the broader context of 1969 quarter varieties has enhanced interest in all coins from this transitional year. Some collectors create specialized sets focusing on all 1969 quarters, clad and silver varieties alike, seeking to understand how the mint navigated this period of evolving compositions and policies. The market value for 1969 D Washington quarters varies significantly based on both condition and recognized error attributes. A common circulated piece may trade for just a couple of dollars, particularly if it shows wear. However, uncirculated examples graded MS 66 and above by a respected grading service can sell for hundreds of dollars, especially when the surfaces exhibit strong eye appeal and original luster. Certified examples with noted varieties, such as certain die cracks or other documented anomalies, can also command premiums, though specialized collectors tend to value pieces based on rarity, documentation, and condition. Collector interest in the 1969 D quarter has grown over time for several reasons. One is the story this coin tells, a story of transition, adaptation, and the broader evolution of American coinage in response to economic pressures. Another is the challenge of finding high-quality survivors from a series that was overwhelmingly produced for circulation and heavy use. And beyond these technical reasons is a more emotional one. Many collectors enjoy connecting with coins that represent a broader historical narrative, coins that circulated through daily life, passed from hand to hand, touched by ordinary Americans long before entering collections. From a teaching perspective, the 1969 D quarter offers multiple lessons. It illustrates the importance of understanding metal compositions, mintages, design continuity, and how economic forces, such as rising metal prices, can reshape entire coin series. It also teaches collectors how condition dramatically influences value, and how even within a common year and mint, subtle differences can provide variation, intrigue, and value. If you're lucky enough to find a 1969 D Washington quarter that still shines with original mint luster, or one that exhibits distinct and documented die anomalies, you're holding more than pocket change. You're holding a tangible testament to an era of change, in coinage, in economy, and in American history. And that is exactly why collectors continue to seek out this powerful quarter, a coin that proves sometimes the most ordinary designs can hold the most extraordinary stories. 1995 D Washington quarter dollar coin. As we arrive at the final coin in this top 5 list, the 1995 D Washington quarter stands as a powerful reminder that modern coins, even those struck in enormous numbers, can hold surprising value when condition, rarity, and collector demand collide. At first glance, it looks like just another mid-1990s clad quarter. But beneath that familiar silver-gray surface lies a fascinating story of mintage trends, strike quality challenges, error varieties, and high-grade scarcity that continues to energize collectors today. The 1995 D quarter was struck at the Denver Mint, identified by the small d mint mark located on the obverse to the right of George Washington's ponytail ribbon. The design remains the classic portrait created by John Flanagan, first introduced in 1932 to commemorate the 200th anniversary of George Washington's birth. By 1995, this design had been a staple of American commerce for more than 6 decades. On the obverse, Washington faces left in a dignified and formal pose. The word liberty arches prominently above his head. In God We Trust appears to the left of the portrait, while the date 1995 sits at the bottom rim. The surfaces on well-struck examples display fine detail in Washington's hair, especially above the ear and along the tied ribbon at the nape of the neck. The reverse features the enduring heraldic eagle design. The eagle spreads its wings in a bold display of strength, clutching a bundle of arrows symbolizing readiness and defense. Olive branches rest beneath, representing peace. United States of America curves above the eagle, and quarter dollar anchors the lower rim. The motto, E pluribus unum, appears above the eagle's head. The coin's composition remains copper-nickel clad, consisting of a pure copper core sandwiched between outer layers of 75% copper and 25% nickel. It weighs 5.67 grams, measures 24.3 millimeters in diameter, and features a reeded edge, specifications consistent with all clad Washington quarters of the era. Now let's talk mintage. The Denver Mint produced approximately 1,103,216,000 Washington quarters in 1995. That's over 1.1 billion coins, a staggering number. In fact, this makes the 1995 D one of the highest mintage Washington quarters of the 1990s. With such a massive production run, circulated examples are extremely common. You can still find 1995 D quarters in pocket change today, often worn from decades of use. In circulated grades, good, very fine, extremely fine, the coin carries no premium and remains worth face value. But once again, condition changes everything. Despite over 1 billion coins struck, very few survive in pristine, high-grade mint state condition. The reason lies in the purpose of production. These coins were struck for commerce, not collectors. They were bagged in large quantities, transported in bulk, and distributed into circulation where they experienced heavy use. Contact marks from bag storage are common. Surface abrasions, nicks, and weak strikes reduce the number of coins that can achieve elite grades. In MS63 or MS64, the 1995 D quarter typically sells for $5 to $10. These grades are relatively easy to find in original mint sets or rolls. In MS65, values increase to around $15 to $25 depending on eye appeal and luster. Once you reach MS66, prices begin to climb more noticeably, often ranging from $40 to $80. The true rarity appears at MS67. Certified MS67 examples have sold at auction between $250 and $500, with some exceptional coins achieving even higher results during competitive bidding. Why is MS67 so scarce despite the enormous mintage? Strike quality plays a critical role. Many 1995 D quarters show softness in Washington's hair detail and flattening in the eagle's breast feathers. Additionally, luster may be uneven or subdued on many examples. Coins that achieve MS67 typically display strong, vibrant cartwheel luster, sharp strike definition, and minimal contact marks. Even a single noticeable abrasion can prevent a coin from reaching this level. Registry set competition further intensifies demand. Collectors building the highest graded Washington quarter sets compete for the finest known examples. Population reports from major grading services reveal that while hundreds of millions were minted, only a tiny fraction survive at MS67 or higher. This dramatic drop-off in top-grade availability fuels market premiums. Now let's explore error coins, where modern quarters can become truly exciting. Double die varieties have been identified for the 1995 D quarter, though they are not widespread. Strong examples showing noticeable doubling in Liberty, Indiana God We Trust, or the date can command $75 to $200 depending on visibility and certification. Off-center strikes remain among the most popular modern errors. A 1995 D quarter struck 10% to 20% off-center with a visible full date can bring $100 to $300 depending on severity and overall eye appeal. More dramatic examples can reach even higher prices. Clipped planchet errors are also collectible. These occur when the metal blank is improperly punched, leaving a curved portion missing from the coin. Values typically range from $75 to $200 depending on size and condition. Broad strikes, coins struck without the retaining collar, result in expanded diameter and distorted rims. These errors often sell for $100 to $250. Die cracks and retained cut errors also appear on some examples. A retained cud, where a portion of the die breaks but remains partially attached, can create a dramatic raised blob on the coin's surface. Larger, visually impressive cuds may sell for $150 to $300. Perhaps the most dramatic and valuable errors involve wrong planchet strikes. If a 1995 D quarter were struck on a cent or dime planchet and authenticated by a major grading service, it could command several $1,000s due to extreme rarity and collector excitement. Another fascinating area of interest involves coins struck on experimental or foreign planchets, though such occurrences are exceedingly rare. When verified, they can become headline-worthy pieces within the numismatic community. Collector interest in the 1995 D quarter has grown significantly over the past decade. As the Washington Quarter series approaches nearly a century in existence, collectors are re-evaluating modern issues once dismissed as too common to matter. We uncover the rare and most valuable 1969 D. George Washington quarter dollar coin, revealing its history, design, mintage secrets, errors, auction records, and why collectors are still hunting it more than half a century later. 1969 D. George Washington quarter dollar coin. The story of the 1969 D. George Washington quarter begins in the shadow of one of the most dramatic changes in American coinage. Just a few years earlier, in 1965, the United States officially ended the long-standing tradition of striking circulating quarters in 90% silver. Rising silver prices and hoarding had pushed the nation into a coin shortage crisis. The solution was revolutionary: a copper-nickel-clad composition bonded to a pure copper core. By 1969, that new metallic identity was firmly established. The 1969 D quarter was struck at the Denver Mint, proudly bearing the small but important D Mint mark on the obverse, just to the right of Washington's tied hair ribbon. That small letter reappeared only recently before this date, as mint marks had been temporarily removed from coins dated 1965, 1966, and 1967 in an effort to discourage collecting and hoarding. Their return in 1968 restored a long-standing tradition and renewed enthusiasm among collectors. The obverse design of the 1969 D quarter features the familiar left-facing portrait of George Washington, originally sculpted by John Flanagan in 1932 to commemorate the bicentennial of Washington's birth. Washington's dignified profile is centered boldly, with liberty arching above his head, "In God We Trust" placed to the left of his neck, and the date 1969 positioned below. The Denver Mint mark sits modestly to the right of the ribbon at the base of his ponytail. The reverse displays the heraldic eagle with wings fully spread, perched upon a bundle of arrows, and framed by olive branches beneath. United States of America curves around the top edge, E pluribus unum rests above the eagle's head, and quarter dollar anchors the bottom. This reverse design would remain until 1998, making the 1969 D part of the long-running classic Washington quarter era before the state quarter redesign. The composition of the 1969 D quarter consists of outer layers of 75% copper and 25% nickel bonded to a pure copper core. It weighs approximately 5.67 grams and measures 24.3 millimeters in diameter, with a reeded edge. While lacking the intrinsic silver value of earlier issues, this coin's worth lies in rarity, condition, and mint errors. The Denver Mint struck approximately 114,372,000 quarters in 1969. At first glance, that mintage figure suggests commonality, and indeed, circulated examples are abundant. Most worn pieces remain worth only face value or slightly above. But as seasoned collectors understand, mintage numbers alone never tell the whole story. The key to understanding the value of the 1969 D quarter lies in condition rarity. Coins produced during the late 1960s were struck in massive quantities to stabilize circulation. Speed often took precedence over precision. Dies were used longer than ideal, leading to weak strikes, soft details, and diminished luster on many coins. As a result, sharply struck, fully lustrous examples in pristine, uncirculated condition are far scarcer than the raw mintage suggests. In mint state grades of MS63 or MS64, the 1969 D quarter remains relatively affordable. However, as condition improves, values increase sharply. At MS65, collectors can expect stronger premiums. At MS66, the coin becomes notably scarcer. But it is in MS-67 condition that the 1969 D quarter transforms into a serious prize. Certified MS-67 examples have sold for thousands of dollars at major auctions. Some superbly preserved coins with exceptional eye appeal, strong strike detail, minimal contact marks, and vibrant luster have realized prices exceeding $5,000. The population of coins graded MS-67 or higher remains extremely limited, and registry-set collectors actively compete for top-ranked specimens. Strike quality is a critical factor for the 1969 D quarter. Many examples exhibit weakness in Washington's hair above the ear and at the crown, as well as soft feather detail on the eagle's breast. Fully struck coins displaying crisp hairlines and bold feather definition are highly desirable and command premiums. Beyond high-grade condition, the real excitement often lies in mint errors and varieties. One of the most discussed and sought-after varieties of the 1969 D quarter involves doubled die characteristics. While not as dramatic as some earlier doubled dies in American coinage, certain examples display noticeable doubling in the lettering of Liberty or I in God We Trust. Careful magnification is often required to confirm authenticity. Strong doubled die examples can sell for hundreds or even thousands of dollars depending on visibility and condition. Off-center strikes are another category of collectible error found among 1969 D quarters. These occur when the planchet is improperly positioned during striking, resulting in a coin where part of the design is missing. Dramatic off-center examples retaining a full visible date can command significant premiums. The greater the percentage off-center while maintaining key design elements, the higher the value. Clipped planchet errors also appear within this date. These coins are missing a curved or straight section of metal due to a punching error during blank production. Authentic clipped planchets show distinctive features such as the Blakesley effect along the rim opposite the clip. Depending on size and eye appeal, clipped 1969 D quarters can sell for several $100s or more. Broad strikes represent another collectible error. When a coin is struck without the restraining collar in place, it spreads outward, losing its reeded edge and appearing wider and flatter. Broad-struck 1969 D quarters are visually striking and remain popular among error collectors. Perhaps most intriguing are wrong planchet strikes. There have been documented cases of quarters struck on planchets intended for other denominations, such as nickel or dime blanks. These off-metal errors are rare and highly valuable. A genuine 1969 D quarter struck on an incorrect planchet can command thousands or even tens of thousands of dollars, depending on the metal and condition. Another category includes struck-through errors, where foreign materials such as grease, debris, or metal fragments interfered during striking. These coins exhibit unusual impressions or missing design details and are avidly collected. While transitional silver errors are less commonly associated with 1969 than with earlier dates, the possibility of an off-metal strike involving a silver planchet always captures collector imagination. Any authenticated example would be a major numismatic discovery. The 1969 D quarter also benefits from its position in a broader historical narrative. By 1969, the United States was adapting to a post-silver coinage system. Inflation pressures were rising. The Vietnam War was ongoing. The Apollo 11 moon landing captured global attention that same year. These quarters circulated during a transformative era in American history. For many collectors, owning a high-grade example connects them tangibly to that moment in time. 1966 Washington Quarter Dollar Coin. The 1966 Washington Quarter Dollar stands at the heart of one of the most dramatic transitions in modern American coinage history. To understand its importance, we must rewind to 1964, when the United States was facing a severe coin shortage. Rising silver prices, hoarding, and speculation were draining silver coins from circulation. The government responded decisively with the Coinage Act of 1965, which removed silver from circulating dimes and quarters and reduced the silver content in half dollars. By 1966, the Washington quarter was no longer struck in 90% silver. Instead, it was minted in a copper-nickel clad composition, an outer layer of 75% copper and 25% nickel bonded to a pure copper core. This shift marked a new era. The 1966 quarter is part of the first full year of clad coinage for the denomination. Interestingly, To discourage collectors from hoarding newly issued coins, the United States Mint made a controversial decision. No coins from 1965, 1966, or 1967 would carry mint marks, regardless of where they were struck. That means every 1966 Washington quarter lacks a mint mark, even though production took place primarily at the Philadelphia Mint. The obverse design features the iconic portrait of George Washington, originally sculpted by John Flanagan in 1932 to commemorate the 200th anniversary of Washington's birth. His dignified left-facing profile dominates the coin, with Liberty arching above, "In God We Trust" to the left, and the date 1966 positioned below. The reverse carries the powerful heraldic eagle, wings spread wide, clutching arrows and olive branches, symbolizing readiness for war and desire for peace. United States of America curves around the top. E pluribus unum sits above the eagle's head, and quarter dollar anchors the bottom. In terms of mintage, the 1966 Washington quarter had an enormous production run of approximately 821,101,500 pieces. On the surface, that makes it common, and in circulated condition, it absolutely is. Most examples in worn grades are worth face value or slightly above. However, this is where condition rarity transforms the conversation. High-grade, uncirculated examples of the 1966 quarter are surprisingly scarce. Because collectors were still adjusting to clad coinage and many coins were mishandled or poorly stored, pristine specimens are much harder to find than the mintage suggests. In grades like MS-66 and above, values climb dramatically. Certified examples graded MS-67 by leading grading services have sold for several $1,000s. In rare instances, superbly preserved pieces with exceptional luster and strike quality have crossed the auction block for over $10,000. But beyond high-grade examples, errors and varieties make the 1966 quarter truly exciting. One of the most famous and controversial rarities associated with this date is the 1966 quarter struck on a 90% silver planchet. These are transitional errors, coins mistakenly struck on leftover silver blanks from 1964 or earlier. Since silver quarters were officially discontinued, these pieces were never intended to exist. Authentic examples are extremely rare and highly valuable. When verified, a genuine 1966 silver quarter can command tens of thousands of dollars, depending on condition. Other notable errors include double die obverse, where design elements such as the date or lettering show clear doubling due to misalignment during the die creation process. While not as dramatic as earlier double dies in U.S. coinage history, strong examples can bring hundreds or even thousands of dollars. Off-center strikes are another category of collectible error. Some 1966 quarters were struck significantly off-center, leaving part of the design missing while retaining a full date. These visually dramatic pieces are highly desirable, with values depending on the percentage of off-center strike and overall eye appeal. Clipped planchets, where a portion of the metal blank is missing before striking, are also found among 1966 quarters. These mint errors create curved or straight missing sections and can sell for several $100s or more. Then there are struck-through errors, where debris interfered during the minting process, leaving unusual impressions on the coin's surface. Each of these errors tells a unique story of industrial production at high speed during a turbulent period. Collector interest in the 1966 Washington quarter remains strong, particularly among those assembling high-grade registry sets. Since no mint marks were used, condition is everything. Collectors compete fiercely for top population specimens graded MS-67 and above. The coin represents not just a denomination, but a historic turning point, the definitive break from silver coinage for everyday American transactions. So while millions were made, few survive in pristine condition, and even fewer carry the dramatic mint errors that elevate them into five-figure territory. The 1966 Washington quarter is a reminder that rarity is not always about low mintage. It's about survival, condition, and unexpected mint mistakes. 1967 Washington quarter dollar coin. If the 1966 quarter represents transition, the 1967 Washington quarter captures momentum. By 1967, the United States Mint was operating at full throttle, determined to end the coin shortage crisis. Clad coinage was now firmly established, and production numbers soared once again. Like 1966, the 1967 quarter carries no mint mark, continuing the mint's effort to discourage collecting and hoarding. The obverse and reverse designs remain unchanged from previous years, maintaining John Flanagan classic portrait and eagle motif. But beneath that familiar design lies a story of mass production under intense pressure. The mintage of the 1967 Washington quarter reached approximately 1,524,031,848 coins. That's over 1.5 billion pieces, an astonishing number reflecting the urgency of restoring coin circulation. With such a massive mintage, circulated examples are extremely common. Most are worth face value. Yet once again, the real intrigue lies in condition rarity and mint errors. Finding a sharply struck 1967 quarter with blazing luster and minimal contact marks is far more challenging than raw numbers suggest. Coins were produced rapidly, often with less attention to fine detail and die longevity. As a result, many examples exhibit weak strikes, particularly on Washington's hair and the eagle's breast feathers. In grades of MS66 and above, the 1967 quarter becomes significantly scarcer. At MS67, values climb into the thousands. Auction records show top-grade certified examples selling for impressive premiums, sometimes exceeding $5,000 depending on eye appeal and market demand. Among error coins, the 1967 quarter is especially exciting. Double-die varieties exist, though most are subtle. Strong examples with visible doubling on the obverse lettering or date can command substantial premiums. These are carefully scrutinized by collectors and grading experts. Off-metal errors are particularly valuable. There are documented cases of 1967 quarters struck on wrong planchets, including dime planchets or even foreign coin blanks. These rare mint mistakes are highly sought after and can sell for thousands to tens of thousands of dollars depending on the specifics. Off-center strikes remain a popular category. Because of the high production volume, numerous off-center 1967 quarters exist, with dramatic examples bringing strong collector interest. Another category includes broad strikes, where the coin was struck without the retaining collar, causing it to spread outward and lose its reeded edge. These pieces have a distinctive appearance and solid market demand. Perhaps most fascinating are transitional silver-clad errors, similar to those seen in 1966. Although extremely rare, a 1967 quarter mistakenly struck on a silver planchet would represent a major discovery and command enormous value. Collector interest in the 1967 Washington quarter is fueled by registry competition, error hunting, and the broader narrative of the coin shortage era. The absence of mint marks adds a unique historical twist. These coins reflect a time when the mint actively tried to suppress collecting behavior. For modern collectors, assembling a high-grade 1967 example is a serious challenge. Superb specimens with sharp strikes and clean surfaces are elusive, and demand remains steady. While common in circulation, the coin transforms dramatically at the highest levels of preservation. 1969 Washington quarter-dollar coin. By 1969, mint marks returned to United States coinage. The coin shortage crisis had stabilized, and collecting activity was once again encouraged. The 1969 Washington quarter was struck at multiple facilities, including Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco. Philadelphia issues still carried no mint mark. Denver coins bore a D, and San Francisco produced proof versions marked with an S. The total mintage for the 1969 Philadelphia quarter was approximately 176,212,000 pieces, while the Denver mint struck around 114,372,000 coins. Additionally, the San Francisco mint produced over 2.9 million proof quarters for collectors. The design remains John Flanagan enduring portrait and eagle reverse, but the return of mint marks adds renewed collecting appeal. In circulated grades, 1969 quarters are common and worth face value. However, high-grade examples once again become condition rarities. MS67 and above coins from both Philadelphia and Denver are scarce and valuable. Premium auction results have exceeded several $1,000s for superbly preserved specimens. Proof coins from San Francisco are also highly collectible. Deep cameo or ultra cameo examples, featuring frosted devices contrasted against mirror-like fields, are especially desirable. Perfect PR70 graded proofs can bring strong premiums. The 1969 quarter is also known for compelling error varieties. Double die obverse have been identified, with noticeable doubling in the date and lettering. These pieces can sell for hundreds or thousands, depending on strength and condition. Off-metal errors continue to fascinate collectors. Quarters struck on dime planchets or other incorrect blanks represent significant mint mistakes and command substantial prices. Clipped planchets, broad strikes, and off-center strikes are found as well, each offering unique visual appeal. Collector interest in the 1969 Washington quarter is bolstered by the return of mint marks and the availability of proof issues. It represents the stabilization of American coinage after a period of economic uncertainty. In top condition, these coins are fiercely pursued by registry-set competitors. And among error specialists, rare varieties can command astonishing prices.